Hi, welcome to the Daily Ref. In this tutorial series, you will learn how to get started with the Power Tools suite in Excel. The Power Tools suite includes Power Query, Power Pivot, DAX, and Data Model. It provides you with business intelligence capabilities directly in Excel. You won't need any third-party add-ins or plugins for this. This tutorial series will be a perfect place for anyone to get started with Power Tools in Excel. In this first tutorial of the series, I will introduce you to a step-by-step business intelligence workflow to follow. Also, I will briefly explain the tools used in this workflow. You will learn what these tools are, what you can do with these tools, and how they fit in the Excel environment. As a side note, the tools and concepts explained in this tutorial series are applicable in Power BI too. Alright, let's start with the business intelligence workflow first. In Excel, the business intelligence workflow starts with the raw data. The raw data can come from virtually anywhere. For example, the data can come from flat or CSV files, relational databases, or web APIs. No matter where the data live, these Power Tools provide flexible and consistent ways to connect with your data sources. After connecting with your data source, you import the data using the Power Query editor. As a side note, Power Query is now known as Get and Transform. These two phrases point to the same tool. After importing the data, you use the Power Query editor to shape your data using various data transformation tools. The fancy term for this process is ETL, extract, transform, and load. When you apply data transformations, the Power Query stores each transformation as a step. You can rerun, amend, or remove these steps at any time. It automates tedious and time-consuming data transformation tasks, therefore, it is one of the most notable features of Power Query. After importing and shaping, you load the data into Excel's data model. This is where you perform data modeling tasks, for example, building relationships between the tables, defining hierarchies, and building overall infrastructure to store your data efficiently. Because the data model stores your data in compressed form, you can load any number of rows in it. There is no limitation of about 1 million rows like you have in a traditional Excel worksheet. In the last step of this workflow, you use Power Pivot and DAX to bring your data to life. This is where the data analytics start. With DAX formula language, you can build simple to complex calculations to analyze data in your data model. Whereas, the Power Pivot is just like a normal pivot table except it can show data using the entire data model. This makes Power Pivot tables exceptionally useful because you don't have to merge your tables manually. When building business intelligence solutions in Excel, you will be iterating throughout this 4 steps process. Key benefits of Excel Power Tools suite. Let's review the benefits of Excel Power Tools. Once you start using Power Tools, it'll change the way you work in Excel. Among all benefits, the key 4 benefits are: 1. You can import millions of rows in Excel. 2. You can create automated data shaping routines. 3. You can mix multiple data sources to build a flexible data model. 4. You can use DAX, the Data Analysis Expressions language, to build flexible and robust calculations. Now that you are familiar with the business intelligence workflow in Excel, and all the relevant tools, let's start learning the first tool you'll meet in this workflow, the Power Query Editor. Power Query Editor, Data Import Options. Before we start working with Power Query Editor, let's explore the options to import data. As I mentioned previously, the Power Tools provide multiple options to connect with various data sources. On the Data tab, under the Get and Transform Data group, you can find the Power Query tools. In the Get and Transform Data group, click the Get Data dropdown to see various options to import your data. For example, from File, from Database, from Azure, etc. Please note, in older versions of Excel, the command name can be New Query, instead of the Get Data. Also, under the Get and Transform Data group, you have frequently used import data tools, for example, from text/CSV, from web, or from table/range. Also, under every type of connection, you have multiple import data tools, for example, in the From File type you have from text/CSV, from XML, or from JSON. The beauty of these options is that the user experience to connect with data sources is consistent and easy. For the sake of simplicity, in this beginner's tutorial, I will use a frequently used beginners-friendly tool, from text/CSV to import data. Power Query Editor, the interface. Now that you are familiar with the data importing options, let's get to know the Power Query interface. There are 2 ways to open the Power Query Editor. 1. Go to the Data tab. Under Get and Transform Data Group, click on the Get Data drop-down menu. Select the Launch Power Query Editor option. 2. On the Data tab, under the Queries and Connections group, click on the Queries and Connections command. In the Queries and Connections pane, double-click any existing query to open it in the Power Query Editor. Regardless of the method used, you will end up on the same Power Query Editor window. To open the Power Query Editor, I'm going to double-click one of the existing queries. There are 5 fundamental areas of the Power Query Editor. These are query editing tools, formula bar, data preview, query settings, and queries. The query editing tools area is where all your data transformation tools live. It has 4 tabs: Home, Transform, Add Column, and View. The Home tab contains frequently used tools, for example, tools to manage columns or rows, text transformation, or shaping tools. The Transform tab contains tools to transform numbers, text, or date-specific data. Any operation applied using these tools modifies the data within the same column. The Add Column tab contains almost the same tools as in the Transform tab. The only difference is that using any tool from this tab generates an updated version of the column. For example, you can apply the uppercase tool to a text column, and it'll create a new column with uppercase values without impacting the existing column. The View tab has interface-related useful options. For example, under the Data Preview group, the Column Quality checkbox can show useful information about each column. The formula bar is where the M-code live. For every data transformation, the engine will generate the M-code behind the scenes. In the Applied Steps pane, you can click any step to see its M-code in the formula bar. As a beginner, I would recommend staying away from the M-code. Once you become familiar with the tools available, you can start learning the M language for advanced use cases. The Data Preview area shows the data of the selected query. Any data shaping effects will be visible here. In the Data Preview, right-click any column header to see a useful shortcut menu. The Query Settings area has 2 main parts: Properties and Applied Steps. Under Properties, it is particularly important to give your queries a meaningful name because it is extremely hard to rename the queries once they are loaded. Under Applied Steps, you can see the engine is recording transformation steps. You can edit, delete, or run these steps with a click of a button. Once you start building projects, you will realize how powerful this feature is. The Queries area shows the queries in your project. In our case, the project has multiple queries, for example, calendar lookup, and customer lookup. Throughout the ETL process, you will be working across these areas of the Power Query Editor. Remember, give your query a meaningful name before doing anything else regarding data shaping. Power Query Editor, Data Loading Options. Before we start with the ETL process, I want to explain an important concept of loading data in Excel. After applying all your data shaping operations, you will load that data in Excel for further analysis. You have a couple of options for this. In the Power Query Editor, on the Home tab, click on the Close and Load dropdown. Select the Close and Load to command and it will present you with the Import Data dialog box. Here you have various options to load your data, for example, as an Excel table, pivot table report, pivot chart, or only create connection. As a side note, depending upon your version of Excel, the options available may vary. Now if your dataset is small, you can use the table, or pivot chart option. However, the only create connection is the best option because it preserves the connection only with the query, and does not load the data physically in the Excel. Therefore, using this option, you can load millions of rows without any limitation. When you load data in Excel, you can either load it on an existing sheet or a new sheet. The Add this data to the data model checkbox is crucial to understand. If you check this checkbox, then the engine will load data from Power Query Editor to the data model, where you can build your relationship-based flexible data model. In this tutorial series, I will be loading the data to the data model. Then in the future tutorials, I'll show you the data modeling process, which is building relationships, defining hierarchies, etc. You can also open the Import Data dialog box for an existing query. For this, in the Queries and Connections pane, just right-click any query and select the Load to option from the menu. And here you have your Import Data dialog box. In this tutorial, I have introduced you to the Power Tools in Excel, more specifically the Power Query Editor. Also, we discussed the various data import and loading options. In the next tutorial, you will learn how to start using data transformation tools available in the Power Query Editor.